one of the voices that really wanted to see this summit happen, a member of the SHOC, Sacramento Organizing Committee, and been contemplating this for a while. I joined it recently, probably 7-8 months ago, and I kind of paid attention, and eventually it seemed obvious to me that there are so many different silos and organizations, and all committed to the same idea. What if you put them all together in one room at one time, at one place, and challenged them all together to do a miracle? I don't believe in zap miracles, but I believe in communal miracles. A communal desire can sometimes create miracles and break through that. This will never work. You can't fix this. It's over. Nothing you do is going to help. It takes a miracle to break through that. Because we all know that we want things to get better, and everybody's trying their very best, but it's getting worse. There's something wrong here. There's something missing. And I hope that together we can maybe fill in what's missing. I don't know how many people are familiar with the whole idea of paradigm shift. How do you make a major change? How do you make big changes? And there's a technique to it, but basically it's brainstorming, throwing out all the ideas that pop into your head, and then going through each one of those ideas, and then coming up with a consensus, and then finally boiling it down to these three things are going to change the world. Now, I know that's fantasy in a way, but I've seen it work. We had a retreat in this church just a few months ago where it felt like a miracle for most of us, and it changed where this church is going. And this summit here is part of the process of what's happening at Westminster. Westminster has become an openly progressive church. It's saying it's time to speak out, time to offer an alternative to what, excuse the expression, crazy Christianity has taken over this public face of Christianity. And progressive churches have just stood by and watched it happen silently, which is the same as consent, as we all know. So, progressive churches are speaking up, and this is one of them. And I'm proud of this church for what it's done. It's willing to do this, All right. I had some bullet points here, and I'm going to do this so that at the end of this I don't go, oh my God, I was supposed to say that. Oh. There's a part about how I got here, how I ended up here. Who am I to be sitting up here speaking to you? And it's a long, tortured path. But eventually, it comes down to getting thrown out of the seminaries in the 60s because I was too radical. And then getting into a career in mental health, psychiatric nursing instead, and totally rejecting the church, pox upon the church, particularly the Presbyterian church, because of the way I was treated. Then I moved into Park Place here across the street, and Westminster has a breakfast for them every Thursday. So I went down and said, okay, I'll take a breakfast, just don't try and evangelize me. So I had breakfast, and the pastor happened to be there, Pastor West. And he, greeted, hello, how are you? And I said, don't evangelize me. don't even start. And he goes, what? So I told him a little bit about getting thrown out of the seminary after preparing my whole life, you know. And he said, and my alienation from the church after that, 40 years, didn't step inside a church. Pox on you churches. They're all businesses. They're all careful, down the middle, don't offend anybody, yada, yada. He said, I can't belong to church like that. So Wes says, I got somebody for you to meet. He happened to be sitting a couple tables over. And John Stevens, he's recently passed away, a retired pastor. And Wes said, somebody you need to meet. Sat down with him, and we had this long conversation about radical progressive theology. And he said, you belong here. There's room for you in this church. In fact, you're needed in this church. Now, it took me a while, but eventually I joined the church, and shortly thereafter became a deacon in the church. And I said, you sure you want to do this? Because you're legitimizing me. He said, yes, we need a little of what you are offering. So, I'm the chair of the Social Justice Action Ministry, which started out as the Westminster Progressive Christianity Forum and eventually morphed into the Social Justice Action Ministry. And this summit is a product of that, in my mind, is a product of that. And I'm very proud of this church and the inclusiveness of this church, the welcomingness of this church, saying, I don't care about your differences or what this, we don't believe, you do believe. Come join us at the table. Dine with us. And we're going to change the world. I do go on. Okay, let me make sure I missed any bullet points here. Purpose. The obvious purpose of this summit is unity, coordination, cooperation, collegiality among all the entities, committees, stakeholders, organizations, advocates, resource individuals, academic experts, faith communities, agitators, and extremists. I'm glad I read that. And I talked here about a little about a paradigm shift. Inclusive participation is a critical feature. That means everybody has to be drawn into the conversation. There can't be any observers. You all have to speak from your heart and say what you mean. That's the only way that you get paradigm shifts. You can't be careful. No. You have to be bold. Try to avoid consuming time with a litany of grievances. I believe that. You know, we can get lost in our grievances, reciting them and telling the stories over and over again. And the idea of the summit is to leap over those, say, what are we going to do about this? Because what we've been doing ain't working. So let's focus the minds and hearts of all these people. You get the idea. All right. Tomorrow, there's going to be panel town hall conclusions. We're expecting all of these roundtable discussions to start out with what? Had it written down. Researching, kind of, and then the second half of the program is what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What should we do? what can we bring to the table? And on Sunday, we're going to have one person from each of the discussions sit down at a panel and say, this is what we came up with. So you have to write some of these things down. That's what these easels are for.